So hi everyone, my name is Linda. I'm a children's book author and illustrator with Hello Ruby, a whimsical way to teach programming to the little kids. And um, I answered some of your questions today over this video, and surprisingly, I found myself thinking and learning a lot about things that I haven't thought about or learned about in advance. And I think it underlines one of the big challenges we as technology educators have. This field is changing so fast, and there's always so many new practical problems, whether it's about installations or whether it's about use of mobile phones in classroom, that it's really about coming up with these underlying principles more than like exact moments or like examples for what to do in certain situations, and sharing them with one another. And I think the number one thing I would ask you to do is to be curious and to understand that technology, it's really based on humanity. Like the word technology, it comes from Greek and it means the problem solving tools, but also the skills and attitudes and aptitudes that the humans bring into the equation. So really, like the word technology is built on humanity, and it's us who want to figure things out and solve problems, and that's what teaching technology for kids is all about, teaching them to be problem solvers and giving them that sense of self efficacy. But here are the questions. The first question was, how should I, as a parent, show a meaningful relationship with technology? And I'd say it all starts with curiosity. So when I got my first computer when I was 6 or 7 years old, it was actually my dad's work computer, and this was year in 1993 or 4, and it must have cost a fortune. And I think most parents would have said that it's an expensive work equipment, don't touch it, it might break. But what my father did was he told us that there's really nothing that we can do with the computer that could not be undone eventually. And that gave us a very curious and very brave relationship with the computer, and we probably ended up destroying the operating system a few times, but it led to a lifelong quest towards understanding the machine and understanding and how to use the computer as a tool of self-expression. So that's what I would show to the kids, a curiosity towards technology, even though you wouldn't be a professional, trying out new things and discovering together with the child. So the second question was about turning storytelling and turning stories into digital products. And that's a really relevant and interesting question for me personally. So a lot of people ask me, why would I end up using a book to teach programming for kids? Isn't that like an ancient and uninformed choice of mediums? But I'd say that there's a lot we understand about how storybooks and kids' cognitions work that we don't yet understand about digital products. And now that I think I'm working on the third book already, so I have kind of a good grasp about how that works as a medium. And we've actually started developing digital tools around Hello Ruby. But the ideas and the principles were always not to transfer the exact same story experience into a digital form, but really try to think about where computers excel and what like a tablet or a screen is good at. And for me, it boils down to a few things. First of them is that a computer is really good at simulation. It can offer the kind of experiences that we can't do with pen and paper or pure imagination. So anything that you can do that somehow harnesses the power of simulation or modeling, I would definitely move to a tablet. Then the second thing I think computers are really good at is showing cause and effect. If I do this, then that happens. And showing things like this are super interesting for me in when you're moving stories into the digital realm. And then maybe third thing is computers are not linear machines, or they are, but I think the storytelling ought not to try to be linear, meaning that you have a beginning and the middle and the ending. That's how books work, but computers can be much more explorative. When you look at Minecraft, for instance, it the narrative doesn't necessarily have a beginning and an ending. So that's something I would look also into when moving a classical story into a digital form. So the third question was, how are kids able to, at a young age, understand technical interfaces and symbols? And I would break this question into two. I think the other part of the question is, how are kids able to use tablets and apps already at a young age and understand so intuitively the UI and the design? And I think it boils down to the fact that we've made them easier and we've made the UIs more approachable. But I'm not a UI expert, so I can't really tell why that happened. But the second part of the question that is more interesting for me is, do we really know at what age kids should be able to learn to code and what they can grasp at certain sort of levels of cognition? And the answer is we don't. We don't know what the progression of learning to program should look like when you look at kids at a large scale. A lot of the research on programming education has been done with small samples and small groups of kids, and many of them have been mathematically and logically very abled. So the research is still out there, but I think the pedagogicians can influence our thinking quite a bit here. Already Piaget and those guys have done a lot of research on learning math and learning natural languages. So I think it's only a matter of time before we figure out at what age can a kid understand the concept of recursion or the concept of I don't know, looping. And for me, the surprising thing has been that it's earlier than we think it ought to be. So fourth question had to do with mobile phones and how fourth graders use all of their break times watching their cell phones. And I don't have an easy answer for this. I observe the same behavior in myself, and it's really hard to tell a kid to put your phone away when you're yourself glued all the time to your phone. What I would say is that not all screen time is equal. Not everything the kids do on a mobile phone is equally bad or equally good. And especially for a parent, I would try to engage in a discussion with the kid on what they are doing with the mobile phone. Maybe help them see the phone as something that they can use as a medium of creation rather than only consumption. Meaning that if the boys are just playing games or the girls are just browsing gossip rumors, which is a little bit of a biased way of seeing the world in the first place, I would try to help them see how they can take videos with the phone or make a photo project or download one of the more educational applications to learn about the world. And then really ask like what they are doing with the stuff that they are working on. When I was a little kid, I would play a lot of these live role-playing text-based adventures online, and what looked like a very passive and solitary thing for my parents, probably me sitting by the computer all night, was actually a fairly complex like activity where I had a lot of different social encounters. I studied how to build governments and engineering stuff because I needed to understand my character better and so forth and so forth. So had my parents asked a little bit more what I was doing, they probably would have been surprised. The next question had to do with mobile phones and whether we can teach kids to really truly appreciate the digital world without a mobile or a computer access. And I think the answer is, of course, not. I think kids need access to a computer or to a mobile in order to really appreciate it. But that doesn't mean that every single kid should have their own smartphone by the age of 3 or something like that. It means that especially in their early days, we teach them a curiosity and appreciation towards technology. For me, I chose as my medium a lot of sort of crafting and paper-based activities and a lot of just like plain old storytelling and book reading, because I truly believe that a lot of the intellectual concepts behind a computer, the things that we call computational thinking today, can be taught without a computer immediately at sight. I think the curriculum should be expanded when the kids grow up, and a lot of the activities seem more meaningful when you re-practice them with a computer or you expand on them. with a computer, but you can start and you can enhance the learning by taking the learning away from the screen. And just as an example, one activity we've been teaching with the kids is this modeling activity where we play the internet, where one of the kids is the server and one of the kids is the router and one of the kids holds the DNS lookup address book and so forth and so forth. And then we go online and study how the HTTP request travels around the world. I think we as pedagogicians ought to be thinking about a diversity of ways of teaching kids about computers, both on computers and out of computers. So this question had to do with collecting phones before classroom starts and other ways of sort of looking at unnecessary use of cell phones. And this is a hard thing again. I ran a summer school last summer and firsthand experienced how magnetically sort of alluring the phones are and how easy it is the moment the kids have a little downtime for them to start interacting with their phones. I think it's a good idea to take the phones out in certain classes, and then in other classes a phone might be a really important ally for the student in learning new things. And I know this is not a very helpful comment, but oftentimes the phone comes out when the kid is disengaged or the kid is not learning or the kid is bored or the kid is over their head. So it's kind of a symptom of something in the learning process. And it might mean that we need to come up with better and more engaging activities for the kids that keep them engaged. And it's a hard ask, of course, because the phones are made so addictive that it's hard to compete with them. But I'd say that it really depends on the classroom and how it's designed. And in general, I think it's easier if you take the phone out. But again, this same exact thing goes for the adults. Like if we ask our kids to put the phones out, we ought to be asking ourselves to do the same thing. This question was about Minecraft and how the questions askers kids play Minecraft, and it's a good thing, but on the other hand they don't necessarily play outside as much as the person asking would want them to see. So I think Minecraft is a wonderful example of a pedagogically apt game that is made into something that kids find enjoyable and fun on their own. It doesn't feel like medicine, it's like candy for them. But it also has a very sound pedagogical background. It's sort of the whole constructivist idea of building a world and allowing kids to explore and do things on their own that they necessarily aren't allowed to do in the modern world anymore. It gives power to the kids and it teaches logical reasoning, it teaches collaboration, it teaches a lot of things that are really meaningful and helpful in the real life. So I'd say that time spent with Minecraft is probably not away from the time that they are spending outside. They are using the exact same skills over there. But what if you ask the kids to build their Minecraft creations out in the wild? What if you ask them to map their surroundings and build that world into Minecraft? Somehow it's a hard question to answer because I wasn't a very athletic kid when I was growing up, and it was always a drag for me to go outside and come up with something to do because the computer was endlessly more exciting. So maybe somehow making and motivating the kids to see the outside world as something that they still have things to learn from, as opposed to something that is a drag. And probably the Pokemon phenomenon is a good example of how that power is harnessed. And the final question is about teaching programming in primary school and what would be the first steps. So the first step, I think, is admitting that you as a teacher don't need to know everything in order to start teaching. Teaching technology and programming, it's a lot about curiosity and it's a lot about the boldness of going out there and understanding that it might be that your students will be much better at this in a matter of a few hours, and your role as a teacher changes quite a bit. That being said, if you want to prepare, there's a few resources that I definitely encourage you to check out. So First, there's code.org. It's a wonderful resource for any educator. The code.org resource, they have like an hour-long, 20-hour-long curriculums around computing that use characters that kids already know and love, and you as a teacher can really easily prepare in advance for the lessons. Then there's Scratch, which is a little bit more open-ended and maybe requires a little bit of more preparation from you as a teacher. What else? There's Khan Academy for those of you who teach a little bit older kids that I really recommend. I think their JavaScript curriculum is excellent and very well done. And then maybe finding other teachers who are interested in the same things as you are and sharing tips and tricks and practices with them could be a great first step into teaching computing in the primary school.